Excellent. Okay. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. I'm Chris.flv, your Puget Sound keeper. Thanks everyone for coming out today. Puget Sound Keeper is your local voice for clean water from the mountains to the sound. And we were hoping to see some mountains today, but it looks like we're socked in. Our first effort was to organize we were the first organization to focus on the health of the sound. And we've been fighting for clean water and collaborating on solutions to protect and preserve Puget Sound for nearly 30 years. We deal with a lot of challenges every day: sewage treatment, combined sewer overflows, industrial discharges, polluted stormwater runoff, agricultural pollution, marine plastics, creosote pilings, boat sewage, derelict fishing gear. For a tiny nonprofit organization, we have our hands full. But we have no other choice if we're to recover Puget Sound. We have to try our hardest. This is an amazing place, and it's our home. But I want to talk about something a little different today: the relationship between climate and water, and what it means for us right here in Puget Sound. But first, I want to thank again everyone for coming out here today. What a perfect location on the shores of Puget Sound. What do you think about this? Yeah! What do you think of when you think of Puget Sound?
A treasure.
Beauty.
A treasure, beauty. What about clean? What about orca whales?
Yeah. Yes.
What about salmon?
Yeah.
Anyone? What about fishing? Any fishermen here?
Woo!
Yeah.
Oysters.
Oysters.
Native culture.
Birds.
Native culture. Wonderful. Does anyone like to swim in these waters? I'm talking about real swimming, not running out to your knees and then screaming in terror and running back. What about shipping, transportation, industry? Yeah, that's part of our economy here. But how about a fossil fuel highway? No. To export energy from our Midwest to China and the Far East to the highest bidder. It's a scary thought, but that's what's happening. Coal export and oil export are expanding around the country and right here in our region, and it's putting our sound at grave risk. We've been a backwater in the fight for sane climate policy until now, and right now we're ground zero. The proponents of this effort want to turn Puget Sound into a fossil fuel highway, and they are the richest and most powerful corporations in the history of civilization. They have a lot of patience. Peabody Energy, SSA Marine, BNSF Railway, BP, U.S. Oil, Tesoro, ConocoPhillips, they're on the move, and they mean business, and they know how to get what they want.
They won't.
They won't. A lot of what we hear about climate change focuses on the consumer. It's very important stuff, and we're all doing our part. We're switching to hybrids, burning fry oil, biodiesel, using public transportation, riding bikes, but it only gets us so far. All of these gains can be wiped away in an instant, especially be wiped away in an instant if a single bad policy decision. We need our government, and especially our energy-producing industries, to act like they care too. We need to move from the 19th to the 21st century.
Yes.
We're here today in part because of solidarity with rallies all around the country, including the largest ever rally on global climate change at noon today in Washington, D.C. Let's make them hear us. President's Day weekend, and we're demanding that President Obama take a real stand on climate change. It's time to get real, as they say. Mr. Obama emphasized reducing our carbon emissions is the critical challenge of our time during both his State of the Union last week and his second inaugural address a couple weeks earlier, devoting more time to it than any other topic. That's really good news, but we need to see actions behind those words. The action. Today we have our local coordinators for two national organizations, Waterkeeper Alliance and Sierra Club. Our own presidents of these organizations, Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Michael Brune, stood together along with other leaders, including Bill McKibben of 350.org. the Hip Hop Caucus and the actors Daryl Hannah on Wednesday to get arrested in front of the White House. This is not something that they took lightly. The first time ever the Sierra Club is engaged in civil disobedience. We're running out of legal options, and we need to stand up for what we believe in.
We need change we can believe in.
We need change we can believe in. The Keystone XL pipeline has been called game over for the climate by noted NASA scientist Dr. James Hansen. We support his plea and that of other climate leaders to deny the permits to reject Keystone XL. Anything else would be a huge step backward on climate. It's time to move forward on climate, it's time to move forward on clean air, and it's time to move forward on clean water.
Yeah!
So what does climate change mean for Puget Sound? Well, for one, climate change will hurt our region more than many other regions. Warm weather will bring drier conditions in the summer, drying out our riverbeds, and monsoon conditions in the winter to scour out our streams, making life very difficult for Northwest salmon. Most of these populations are already threatened, and with climate change coming, it could move to extinction, and we can't let that happen. What else? Why else should we care? As it turns out, climate change has a couple evil henchmen. One of them is sea level rise. What do we know about sea level rise? Well, unfortunately it's coming, and we can't really stop it. The sea level rise that's anticipated is from the carbon that we already burned 20 and 30 years ago. Where we're standing right now will be underwater.
Ooh.
We can't do anything about that. We're going to have to adapt. But it would be absolutely foolish to continue doing what we're doing while the problem gets worse. So what else? Does anybody else know? As it turns out, there's another evil henchman of climate change, ocean acidification. And as it turns out, the waters before us today are on the front lines of ocean acidification. These are the most acidic waters on the planet. It's already beginning to dissolve the shells and exoskeletons of some of our invertebrates that are floating out in the waters before us. And so what does this mean? Well, first of all, the entire food web depends on the availability of zooplankton like tiny shrimp and pteropods, oyster larvae, crab larvae. Without the zooplankton, the whole food web can collapse. And it's a link in the chain, and the salmon won't be able to get their feed, and then without salmon, we won't have sea lions, we won't have porpoise, we won't have orca whales. But there's a human side to this too. With ocean acidification, we have jobs that are at stake. We have a tourist industry, we have recreation, we have a shellfish industry, the largest on the West Coast. For the last 7 years, they'd have a heck of a time getting oysters to spawn because their shells are dissolving before they can settle out on the oyster shells.
Ooh.
One oyster grower is already moving his hatchery to Hawaii. Now, we can still grow oysters here, we just can't spawn them, but if you can imagine, that's not a very sustainable proposition.
We got the native people.
We have the native people too, and the native people signed a treaty in 1855. They traded away many of their rights for preservation of their most crucial right, which was the opportunity to fish and hunt in their usual accustomed grounds as long as the sun may shine. But it's awfully hard to fish if there are no fish, so they're in danger of losing that right. So we can do better.
Yeah.
So, as Robin mentioned, we have another boondoggle that's coming our way too, and it's the Gateway Pacific Coal Terminal. But it's actually only one of 5 coal terminals that are proposed for the Pacific Northwest. Trains running behind us, 18 trains a day, 9 going north, 9 going south, uncovered, 125 cars long, each one with 100 tons of coal. And there's the equivalent of an entire coal car spilled along that route from Wyoming to Bellingham every year. 100 tons of coal scattered somewhere along that route. we can certainly do better than that. It's time to move forward on climate, it's time to move forward on clean air, and it's time to move forward on clean water. There's just one other thing I wanted to mention here real briefly before we get going, before Mayor McKim comes up. And there is yet another threat that's coming here to Puget Sound. We've talked about the risk of Keystone XL and what that means to our local climate. We've talked about the coal trains and what that means to climate and what that means to Puget Sound. But we're also bringing in now oil from North Dakota. Has anybody heard about the oil boom in North Dakota? It's already coming through here. Our refineries, which were built to bring in oil for Puget Sound, they passed a law that we can only bring in enough oil that we need to use in Washington State. Those refineries, those very refineries, are being converted to oil export terminals.
Boo!
And the pipelines are already maxed out. They're bringing it in on trains. They just started doing this year, and they want to bring more. And they're converting each one of these terminals to export terminals and to handle rail as well as pipelines. So, I wish it was. I don't know if these guys are even talking together, but what do you think? Do you think that the coal trains and the oil trains might have a little bit of a traffic problem coming our way? So
They want to run the rails.
I'll wrap up here. So we need energy. We need domestic energy, but none of these projects do anything for energy security. It's a global market, and the sales just go to the highest bidder, and the engines in China are thirsty. So we asked Mr. Obama to reject the Keystone XL pipeline, reject Gateway Pacific and the other 4 Northwest terminals, and to put a lid on the massive expansion of our coal energy, or our oil energy coming from North Dakota. It's time to move forward on climate. It's time to move forward on clean air. And time to move forward on clean water.